Excellent. Thanks
Yeah,
so much, Karen. Thanks,
you're welcome.
everybody. It's so great to be here with all of you. I'm really looking forward to having an interactive session, sharing a little bit of information with you all. And so I'm going to actually go ahead and just share my screen so we can pull up the slides. But I would love if folks just could put in the chat where you're calling from, and then also what's maybe one thing you're hoping to take away from this conversation. How to solve all of your problems, Jimmy. Okay, well,
Every one of them.
no pressure.
Tanya, make sure you share the right screen.
Yes, can you see my screen?
I can. All of it,
Excellent.
All of
Awesome.
it.
but not the
All of
one you
it.
want.
Not just the
Oh,
present.
you got to hit present or something.
Okay, let's try. And we practiced this, but
Yeah.
let's try one more. Okay, how about now?
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, great. Great, great, great. Okay.
And also, just for Tanya, we talked about this earlier. If you all have questions or thoughts, Tanya said, feel free to interrupt. I'll just keep this dynamic and everyone engaged.
Absolutely. Yes. Do not hold them till the end. Definitely happy to answer them as we go. So as Karen mentioned, today we're going to be talking about healing burnout and cultivating resilience. And so some of the things that we are going to cover are stress and the stress response cycle. What do we even mean by that? Signs of burnout. And then we're going to cover some tips for healing burnout, and then nervous system regulation practices as well. I've got a few practical tips that not only that we can practice ourselves as coaches, but things that we can also share with our clients. And then lastly, I'm going to share some book recommendations at the end. A lot of what's going to be included in this presentation is pulled from a lot of research and data and are included in several of these wonderful books that I've gone back to over and over again, but I've also shared with my clients as well. So as Karen also mentioned, just quickly about me, just she already covered most of this, but I am an ACC with the ICF, a CPC through IPAC, and yay, Jimmy, yeah, thanks for the hands up. And I'm also a mom to 2 young girls, and my background is in consulting, management consulting. So actually a lot of my clients come from that space. So I still find myself in that environment, in that space, though in a different capacity as a leadership coach. And it brings me great joy to support folks with prioritizing their well-being while they're also going after their big goals, which could look like promotion, could look like mommyhood, could look like all different types of things, but doing it all while thriving versus experiencing burnout. So a little bit about just why I'm talking about burnout today and why this is even a topic. The big thing is, one, I'll just start a little bit with some personal experience and just a personal story. I myself, even before becoming a coach, many years ago, myself experienced burnout. And I didn't realize that that's what I was experiencing. I had no idea that that's what I was going through. It was more of I just thought that this is just how life is, right? Life is stressful and you just suck it up and you just deal with it and you kind of go through it. I had a lot of life changes that were happening in my life that were causing a lot of different stress. So there was a lot of external things. I was working 70 plus hours. I unexpectedly lost my mom. She passed away. And then a year after that, I had my first child. So it was all these life all these things happening. And then soon after that, I got promoted. And so I was extremely successful, doing wonderful things, doing all the things. But then I also landed myself in the hospital with extreme exhaustion and really debilitating migraines, which were ended up being diagnosed as complex migraines. So they were not only migraines that, severe headache, but I was also experiencing numbness in my body, blurred vision. And so it was really scary. I wouldn't wish for anyone to get to that point to experience that level of stress and that burnout, but I didn't realize at the time that that's what was happening. And so I have a special place in my heart of sharing, having some empathy for folks that are experiencing that kind of level of stress and being able to address it, notice it, acknowledge it lovingly. And do something about it, maybe respond to it in a different way. So this is why I'm talking to you about it today. I also work with a lot of clients that oftentimes they feel something is off, they don't know what it is. It may be burnout, it may be something else, but oftentimes there is something, and it's really them getting honest with themselves and acknowledging what is happening so that they have that awareness to actually make a different choice. And so what I'm sharing in this presentation today is a lot of the things that I share with my clients. I work with them on, but frankly, it's things that I practice as well for myself because as we'll learn through this presentation is that stress is not likely going anywhere away anytime soon, right? It's something that's prevalent, but how do we respond to it in a way that feels good to us, that's also healthy and helps us to maintain our well-being, emotional, physical, and psychological. So as I mentioned, we can't talk about burnout without talking about stress as well. So the two are definitely linked. And when we think about stress, stress is oftentimes, I don't know about you, but many of the clients that I work with, and even just friends and family, describing ourselves as stressed, I think sometimes comes so easily, just rolls off our tongues, especially when there's a lot going on in our lives, when there might be different things that we're tracking. But at the end of the day, stress is the way that we can define stress is that when there is tension and there's like conflict, right? So we can define it as anything that causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. It's our body's way of responding to a potential threat, even though we might not be physically in danger. But that's what stress is. It's responding to something that we might feel threatened by. And our body's natural reaction to that is to tense up and to be on guard. I like to share the story of, think about, and again, this wouldn't happen in this day and age, in modern day or in a workplace, but if you're, being chased by a lion, right? You're going to be running for your life because you feel like your life is in danger. And so that's what stress is. That's what happens in our bodies. It's that we are responding or reacting to something that we feel threatened by. And so the way we respond to that really can make all the difference in the impact that it has on our mind and our body, and what we continue to choose going forward. So I'd love for us to take a minute or two. I hope folks have maybe a pen or a notebook, or even if you just have some Post-its at your desk, and just take a minute or two. Maybe I'll keep time just to answer some of these questions for yourself. Where does stress come from for you? What does stress feel like in your body? And how do you relate to that stress? If we want to take that time now, and I will let you all know once we've hit the 2-minute mark. that's our 2 minutes. If folks are open to sharing in the chat or maybe coming off mute, and we're a small group here too, maybe one place that stress comes from for you.
I can share. For me, it's responsibilities.
Responsibilities, okay.
Self-defined responsibilities. I'll share.
I'm curious, Shakti, because I have responsibility written down too, but it's also one of those strengths finder strengths, which I think is a riot, because if that's your strength, you also know it could be a curse. So I would say responsibility too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's, well, thank you. I don't, were we supposed to just answer that one question, or are we supposed to go through the whole set?
You know what, Jimmy? You can do whatever you'd like, whatever we've.
So, one form of stress, and there's, we get stress from everything.
Mm.
So one thing today that I notice, and it happens all the time, whenever thanks, Gaston, whenever I have to do something new, or particularly when I have to, and I know you won't believe this, like speak, particularly into a microphone or something, like I wanted to ask a question at this breakfast I went to today, and I was like all the this is going to be a dumb question, nobody's going to want to hear it, or whatever's going to happen. And so how do I feel it is my heart starts to race. I get like sort of a tightness in my chest, and it's like, but then how do I relate to it is I'm like, okay, clearly I'm exhibiting nervousness, but could that just be excitement? And so rechannel it. And so I tried, and it's not easy. Sometimes it's so hard. And I'm like, all right, there's a lot of extra adrenaline flowing right now. Use it in a way that's useful. Try to anyway. And so I calmed myself before I asked the question, and it was fine. But it was so funny because it was like literally my brain was just like, have a pile of this, my friend. And I'm like, dude, you're just going to ask a stupid question. It's not a big deal. What are you doing?
Yeah.
There it was. That was the long answer.
Appreciate you sharing that, Jimmy, because what I heard in there too, and then the same theme with kind of Karen and Shakti, what they shared is that it could be both external or internal. Some of it is kind of the thought process and the thoughts that are kind of reeling in our head. So it could be internally created or it could be externally created, right?
That's why there's nothing stupid. I had written a book called Talk Yourself into Success, and my formula is a positive self-talk plus resilience equals a thriving life. And that's because, and a lot of my resilience expertise comes from Andrew Chate and Karen Rivich, their book from UPenn. And it's a combination of things, but a big piece is creating new habits. And so when every time it pops up where you feel that way, one of the best things to do is to look at it like it's practice.
Yeah. I like that. It's like, that was one of the things that was part of my answer for how do you relate to stress. In the past, I think there was a lot of reaction on my side and there was no actual response. But now there's a lot more of a mindfulness part of it, and a response that is, I see the stress as a signal.
Yes.
The feelings that I'm getting, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever it might be, see it as a signal, and then try to be with what is actually here and what do I really want to do with this, right? Is it I need to maybe reframe where I am in relation to this topic, or do I need to maybe say no to something? Sometimes it's as simple as you need to say no to something, right? And you're not willing to do that offhand. So those are some of the things, and I think that resonates what you said, Susan, with that for me.
I think, and what I'm hearing that you said was basically it's like take the pause.
Yeah, take the pause and
And
the awareness and redirect it. So create that new habit, right? That in and of itself is a habit, but also the habit of of reframing your way of being with it.
not criticizing yourself for it, because then you're reinforcing what you don't want.
Yeah.
Exactly. You all have mentioned so many things that we are also going to touch on. So I love this. This is excellent. And it's exactly that. It's the habits and the talk and the thought process and the loops, right? And the fact that what you've all mentioned is that where can stress can come from, right? So on this next slide here is just a small sampling of what stressors can be. They can be external, right? A deadline at work, or money concerns, or illness, or getting a diagnosis, or possibly passing of a loved one. And then also internal, which is that self-talk, those reels that we play over and over in our head, or maybe even judging ourselves for what we did or didn't do that might create stress. I had actually a client this morning that was the thing that came up for him. He was trying to de-stress at the end of a long day and sat down and watched 30 minutes of Netflix, but that was accompanied with, I should be doing something else. And he had this awareness of, wow, my intent is to de-stress, but I'm creating more stress for myself. And so so identifying where the stressor is coming from and what is creating that stress is also really important in order to be able to respond to it. Because when these stressors do occur, that's what happens. It activates our stress response. It creates signals in our bodies, which I believe Jimmy and Shakti and Susan all mentioned, is that you feel it in your body, right? You might have your chest tighten, or your heart start beating really fast, or in my case, sometimes when I'm nervous, my palms start sweating. And so your body is sending you signals. It's talking to us all the time. And sometimes we're not even aware because we are so busy and we are in the process of just doing all the things and reacting to things versus taking that pause and identifying, okay, what is happening here? What is my body telling me? Do I need to take a moment? Do I need to do something different? Do I need to shift? And sometimes that acknowledgement, even in itself, helps to relieve the stress. What happens though is that when we don't address the stressor and the stress that's being created and identifying it, and we just keep going and we keep moving along, or we suppress it, right? We ignore it. That's when the stress actually gets stuck in our body. And there's data that suggests that when that happens, when the stress gets stuck in our body and doesn't have anywhere to go, that's when illness, burnout can start manifesting. And so it's really important to allow whatever we're experiencing or whatever we're feeling to go through that entire stress cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple slides, but noticing, acknowledging how our body is responding, what needs attention, allowing for it, and then choosing what we want to do next is really critical for it not getting stuck in our bodies and then manifesting in illness and burnout. And so I'm curious to hear from all of you of, if you've experienced burnout, if that has been something you've experienced, how did you know you were experiencing it? And feel free to just come off mute or put it in the chat.
Well, for me, burnout is typically shows out as exhaustion, like internally, and then externally, a very short fuse. Really not interested in trying to work things out as just get through. A closer adherence to my own beliefs and desires and wants for being right, and much less about let's figure this thing out kind of thing. So there's a lot of ways that burnout, I mean, has shown up in my life. I don't know if other people experience it that way, but you get real insular real fast, and that fuse gets super short. I'm not interested in working things out. Like, we just need to get through.
Mm.
For me, what I've been wondering as we're talking about this is that a lot of the things that we've talked about as external stressors, let's say, or just when you were talking, Tanya, about your experience when you said you were working 70 hours a week and then your mom's passing and a new baby and a promotion, like I was writing down, that sounds like big changes with grief. And so I think about that, and what's felt different for me is it's one thing when I can see that I just have to adapt to whatever the change is. I see an end in sight. When I don't see an end in sight, and I feel like it's a constant headwinds I'm facing, and I don't see an end, that's when like a hopelessness sets in. I've completely tapped out whatever resilience I had cultivated. I'm exhausted. And that has happened with some of the consulting work I've done. It's kind of the nature of the work I do. So I have experienced it where it just feels like you start to despair. Or I start to despair, not, I don't mean that generically, but I start to despair.
Yeah, so I heard exhaustion in there. I heard a sense of despair, hopelessness, that doesn't exist, not being able to see an end in sight. Can all contribute to, are all examples or signs of burnout. A few others here are, there's exhaustion, there's physical exhaustion, like our body is physically tired, right? But then there's also emotional exhaustion. And what you mentioned, Karen, right? Grief, right? Sometimes that in itself, your body's not physically tired, but the emotion, holding that emotion, carrying that emotion, or even taking the time to feel that emotion can get exhausting if you try to do it on your own, or you don't ask for help, or you don't get the support, or you don't feel like you have the support. It can get exhausting, and that can wear you down. Other signs of burnout is, Jimmy mentioned short temper, right? Or a short fuse, right? And when that happens too, it impacts other things, right? You don't create time for things that will make you feel good, because you have to just push through. You just got to get it done. Go, go, go. And then when I get to the end, I will rest, right? But oftentimes there is no end, because as we all know, right, things are constantly happening, and there's always things that need addressing, or things that we're responsible for. And so when the sign of burnout is when those things go by the wayside, those things that bring us joy, or those things that we know are good for us, taking care of ourselves, setting boundaries, being able to say yes to things that yes to things that we want to do, but which oftentimes then involves saying no, right, to other things. So being able to identify and creating boundaries, sometimes those completely go by the wayside when someone is experiencing burnout. There's also very little that people feel satisfied about when they're experiencing burnout. Nothing seems to be good enough, or nothing seems to be bringing them joy, even if it once did. And that can be attributed to the fact that they are exhausted. They just don't have any more fuel in the tank to help them keep going. And what's interesting, there's a recent study, I believe it was done by McKinsey, that 75% of people are experienced burnout in the last year. When I knew the number was high, but when I actually saw it in black and white, that actually kind of alarmed me a little bit to see that it was as high as it was. And this was a study done in 15 different countries, polled leaders at all levels, right? From entry level, mid-level to higher executive levels. And 75% of people are experiencing burnout. And it manifests in different ways. And it impacts companies and organizations in different ways as well. And one of the big areas is it lowers performance and lowers productivity levels as well when people are experiencing burnout and still expected to continue showing up and performing. So a lot of signs that oftentimes when we see these, it may be burnout. It also may be something else. The one thing that I will say is when experiencing it, even for yourself, being gentle with yourself and compassionate and having empathy and acknowledging it. And then the same goes for if you notice it in your clients, right? If there's something, if you notice these signs, being gentle as you approach a client that, this is what I'm observing. Is this something that you could be experiencing? Because as we've all kind of noted, when we are experiencing that, our fuses are short, we can get really cynical, skeptical, may not ask for help. And so it can be a very tender situation. So bringing that empathy and compassion for yourself, if you're experiencing it, as well as for your clients. And this quote I just love to share, and I believe Shakti and Susan mentioned it at one point, the power of the pause. So this quote by Viktor Frankl is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so when it relates to burnout, even identifying and acknowledging that burnout might exist or burnout is something we're experiencing, allowing ourselves that pause to say, okay, what now, right? It's creating that space versus the pattern of pushing through, keep going, right? Asking yourself, what do you need in this moment? And so how do we move from a stressed state into a regulated state? How do we go from that place of experiencing burnout to healing from burnout to creating a more sustainable, be it lifestyle, personal life or career? It's using that power of the pause to acknowledge and identify what's happening. And then also creating safety for ourselves. So I use this word of safety because if you recall earlier when I was mentioning stress, when we feel stress or when our stress response is activated, it's oftentimes because we feel threatened in some way. There's a threat present. We feel like we are in danger. So one of the ways to come back to more of a neutral state versus a stress state where it's kind of fight or flight of, let me react to this, is creating safety for ourselves. So an example I'd like to even just give, a personal example, is, even giving a presentation. I was a little bit nervous this morning coming on this Zoom, right? A little bit nervous of, oh my goodness, people going to judge me, or what are they going to think, right? Again, all self-imposed, all thoughts that were going through my mind, but that created a little bit of stress in me, or a little bit of, I know you could feel it in my body. So what did I do? I grabbed a blanket. So I've got a blanket on my lap. That feels safe to me, right? That brings me comfort. I have my water next to me, and that helps me to make sure that I'm continue being hydrated. And then I just took a couple deep calming breaths before I hopped onto the Zoom. So I created safety for myself and brought myself back to a neutral state. And that can be done anytime, anywhere. And so it's identifying what those things are. But the first step is taking that pause to acknowledge, like, what is happening in my body, and naming it.
Can I ask a real quick question, Tanya?
Sure, absolutely.
So I know that, I love that you've got your blanket and your water, and those are all great things and helping you be comfortable and feel safe and secure. I love it, 100%. What do you do if you're in a live three-dimensional situation? You're in a meeting, I don't have my security blanket with me. Are there, maybe you're going to get into it, I don't know, but what can I do to create a sense of safety? Can I just think about my blanket? Is that enough to think about it? Will that give me enough of a, help?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And everyone's going to be a little bit different, right? So for me, if I was to answer that question, if I was actually in in a live situation, I would take a little bit of, if I could, right, take a little bit break, maybe step into the bathroom or do something like that, give myself that space. Or oftentimes too, it's maybe having something in your hand. It's the very much of like the feel, the touch, right? So if you could put something in your hand and hold it, if that's like, if that is comforting, right? That's that, using that sense of feeling something in our hands and kind of that touch aspect. Or, we've all heard the advice of, when giving a presentation, if you're nervous, imagine everybody naked or whatever it might be, right? I don't really kind of take to that, but I've heard other presenters of where they focus and look at something that is calming in the audience, or something that they see that brings them a sense of comfort, right? But it's kind of using our senses in a way to create that level of safety for ourselves. So think about that, of what would bring that level of safety for yourself. And it's thinking about our five senses helps. So it could be looking at something, it could be touching something, it could be drinking something, right? Taste, right? So yeah, great question, Jimmy, and actually a great segue into the next self-reflection prompt of oh yeah, go ahead, Susan.
One thing that also helps is doing a peak experience prior to. Is everyone familiar with peak experience?
No.
Where you think of a time in your life when you were like in your own power. I had a client, I mean, a 47-year-old man that every time he went to the dentist, he turned back into that 5-year-old child. So I had him relate, and it could be any experience. It could be an accomplishment. It could be, for me, it was having my father teach me how to ride a two-wheeler, taking off the training wheels. So you go into whatever, whether it's a speech or anything, feeling like you're in and you embody it. So that I find helps clients a lot.
Yeah, I love that. And that, to Jimmy's point of when he said, is it just thinking of it? Would that just help? But I feel like Susan just took it one level further, right? You can think it and think about that one, but then feel it. How do you embody it? How do you kind of feel that and take it into wherever you're going?
I also find, for me, if I can share this, Jimmy, I think depending on what it is that is causing the stress, and you've probably got enough or if you have the awareness of what is causing the stress, there are different things for me that actually work in different scenarios. Because when the stress is coming from what Tanya was describing, her showing up here with her wisdom, there was a little bit of questioning that wisdom and knowing that whatever wisdom you have is what you have and what you're bringing. It is what it is, right? There's, nothing is ever perfect, in a way that that can mean different things in different circumstances. I think it's helpful to know, for me at least, what is causing the stress and what is going to then help me in that moment. Is it something visual? Is it something more thought oriented or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for us to just take a minute to do some self-reflection and answer one or all of these questions that are here on the screen. And that in moments of times of stress, what feels safe to you? What creates that safety for you? What does it look like to create safety for yourself in those moments of stress? And what do you currently do to respond to stress when you identify that that stress response has been activated? What do you currently do? And we'll take about a minute. That was our minute. And I noticed, I was looking at the chat while you all were doing that, and I saw Karen's comment of a croissant and latte is equals safeties. Love it. All right, great. And just because we are running close to time, I'm gonna move along unless there's something someone is just burning to share about what came up from these questions. Also, we can fill some time with that too.
The only thing I would, because I think my solution, it's not a self-reflection, but I think my solution to like stressful things is a little bit awkward. So when I know I'm going to do a presentation and I am nervous about it, I will, well, all of you see that when we do the master classes or whatever, I've started doing a ridiculous tune at the beginning. Like that might just nervous habit. I don't know what that is. But
Did Jimmy freeze for you?
it's some challenge to what you're going to do. Did I freeze? Oh,
Yeah,
I know
you're
you did.
freezing.
Yeah.
You froze a couple
All
times.
right, I see. It says my connection is unstable. Well,
We
I'll
can
just
hear
be
you now,
quiet
though.
then.
We
Yeah,
can
we
hear
can
you
hear
now.
you. We can hear you now.
Say what you
Okay.
want to say.
Yeah, so very quickly. So what I'll do is I will like raise the level. I'm like, okay, I've got to do this thing and it's probably going to be hard, but how can you, it's almost like a short circuit. Like, let me like either whatever, like try to do something super hard right before or rush myself into it so that I can't really think about it and I just have to jump in. And or I don't know, something, make it very difficult so that way everything after that will be easy. And of course, coming out smiling and energetic is always a win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always observed you doing that so beautifully. And I would say if it is nervousness, what you're doing with that is you're letting that nervousness energy kind of work through you, because that's what emotion is anyway, right? It's just energy in motion and us kind of working it through.
Work it through. I don't want to hold it in. I got to let it out.
Exactly. All right. So we've touched a little bit on this, and this is where, and actually, Jimmy, thank you so much for sharing, because this is kind of, even though you don't maybe realize it, but you kind of walked yourself just through this process here of where you pause and you notice like what you're feeling, right? Is this nervous energy? What is going on? And so having that mindful awareness of even just identifying the feeling that's going on and not judging it in any way, right? All feelings are valid, so there's no judging. Allowing yourself to experience, so that would be the second step here, is feeling your feelings, allowing yourself to experience that, okay, this is nervous energy, or whatever it might be, whatever the emotion is, and allowing yourself to feel it. No, again, no judgment. I think this is the one key theme about this, having this awareness, is bringing the awareness without any judgment and acknowledging it and naming it. And so even with the feeling you're feeling, sometimes when you notice something has triggered you or something is causing a stress, identifying and calling it out, and even sometimes just writing it down or saying it out loud, I feel blank. Sometimes that in itself helps to take a look at it and just be able to see it, and helps you to also kind of work it through your body. And then getting curious about it, right? So in this moment, okay, I feel nervous, or I feel sad, or I feel really excited, right? Whatever that emotion is in this moment, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to shake it out? Do I need to get that nervous energy out? Is it putting on some music? Is it, do I need someone to listen to me? Do I need to call a friend or call my coach or call someone to kind of get it out? It's getting curious of, in that present moment, what is it do you need? And then giving yourself permission to give yourself whatever you might need. And again, the theme here is without any judgment, and allowing yourself to create that safety so that you can make the conscious choice of what is going to best support you. And that's what helps us to, one, acknowledge what's happening in our bodies, navigating them, acknowledging it, identifying it, calling it out, but it helps us also to complete that stress response cycle of we got triggered, our stress response is activated, we identify what's going on, and we allow for it to flow through. Either it's just sitting with it, even if it might be uncomfortable, even just sitting with it is a practice that can sometimes help to diffuse it, or it's doing something else, but it's bringing that mindful awareness to the situation so that we do make a conscious choice of what we need versus just immediately reacting or following a pattern that we're accustomed to doing, right? I heard a lot of like pushing through, getting it done, getting to the end, right? Those are all patterns that sometimes we may fall into if we don't take that moment to pause and acknowledge what's actually happening. So these are some of the things, these are some of the options that when we do take that opportunity to pause, acknowledge, name what's happening for us during either a stressful situation, be it from an external or internal stressor, these are some things that help us to regulate our nervous system and do some activities that could help us to work through whatever we're experiencing, whatever we're feeling, right? So there's physical activity, it's, think about exercise, jumping up and down, putting on some music, dancing, it's moving it. It's kind of moving that emotion through our body. Breathing, breath, be it calming breath, be it maybe meditation, or just taking a moment to notice the breath. And we all do that so naturally. Sometimes we don't necessarily know that that's happening, but bringing that awareness to the breath. Positive social interaction, right? Like being together here, even talking about burnout, right? Sometimes people are like, no one wants to talk about burnout. That's such a downer, right? I even have that notion. But if we don't talk about things or if we don't acknowledge things, then we really can't change things, right? So having positive social interaction, connecting with folks, even making eye contact with people that you work with or people that you meet, in a grocery store or whatever it might be, that also builds that connection that helps to regulate our nervous system, and helps us to come to a neutral place and allows us to really respond to what's happening versus just reacting. Laughter, having time to creating that space to laugh, be it watching something or sharing a joke with a friend. The other day, I heard a crazy stat that children laugh 300 times a day. Actually, I think it was Dr. Zaina's presentation last week. Children laugh 300 times a day, and adults laugh 17 times a day. Such a variance, right? But even having laughter and igniting to help de-stress and to help regulate our nervous system and bring us to that place of being neutral and creating that safety. Affection, right? Words, hugs, allowing that space. Again, it's what you'll notice is the theme of a lot of these activities. It's all us allowing us to connect to our senses, right? Crying, giving ourselves permission. So when we do notice what's happening, maybe it is that we need to release something. And so tears, crying, obviously in the workplace, people that are experiencing burnout, maybe in your work environment, tears are not, acceptable or not crying, or there's this judgment or feeling, but sometimes allowing for that and creating an environment where that's okay. And creating that empathy and compassion is sometimes also what's needed to work whatever emotions you're experiencing, help them complete that cycle, right? So they don't get stuck. We don't hold them in, which as we've learned, manifests in chronic stress and then eventually burnout. And then the last one here is creative self-expression. So finding ways to be able to create, be it writing, coloring, artwork, whatever it might be. So these are some things that help us to not only complete the stress response cycle, but it also helps us to regulate our nervous system so that we are coming from a place where we are able to respond, right? Because we need to create that for ourselves versus always falling into just reacting, which again, when we are feeling in threat or feeling in danger, that's going to, we want to keep ourselves safe. So that's going to be our immediate response. This allows for us to try different things, different habits, different patterns that will support us. And so these are actually just some of the 5 like really practical practices that I share with my clients. I try to also implement as well. Is, you know, these are 5 ways that anytime we do feel like we have been triggered or we feel like we're responding to a kind of stress, to be able to do and kind of shift our energy a little bit and bring us to a neutral state. And it's laughter. You know, one way is, I'm not sure how many folks are Friends fans on this call, but I love that show Friends. And there are some days when days are full and busy. You know, I'll take a couple minutes and watch clips of a Friends episode that just shifts my energy. Hugging and touching, right? So even, you know, hugging a loved one and embracing, there have been significant studies that shows that that brings down our stress levels significantly. Even just like a 2-minute hug, like you know, being in an embrace for a minute or 2 minutes creates that calm in our bodies and helps us to regulate. And even I'll even say like even hugging yourself, right? Like, you know, there have been studies that shows that this also has a significant way of regulating our nervous system. So even if someone's not close by for you to hug, you can hug yourself and kind of create that safety for yourself. Smiling, and I actually see you all on my screen now. I see smiles, and so that even seeing someone else smile can be calming to the nervous system. And then also when you smile, it kind of calms your nervous system. And then another exercise is this wide open heart stretch. So oftentimes we're all sitting at our desks, you know, people that work desk jobs and, you know, so much, and sometimes you don't get up, you're not able to get up, and we talk about the importance of stretching. But even the stretch of this wide open heart stretch, like if folks want to try it, even just do it with me right now, just taking your arms and just like stretching them all the way back, like out, and like see how that feels in your body, right? Like you're stretching, but then you're also, what's happening here is you're opening up your your heart center, right? Your chest. We hold so much tension in our upper body and so much constriction. Sometimes even just releasing that and holding it, similar to a hug, for like a minute or 2 minutes, can create significant benefits. And then lastly, sincere listening, like active listening. I believe all of us on this call are coaches, so we all likely have that skill, do that skill pretty well, and have many opportunities to master it. But also sincere listening, active listening with no agenda, creates that calming effect and helps us to regulate our nervous system. And so those are some of those practical steps. And I know we're running close on time, so I would love to invite everyone on this call to maybe just reflect on and give some thought to what are maybe one practice that you will try and practice on a daily basis over the next week. Feel free to share now in the chat if you don't have to run or come off mute and share, but would love to also hear what that could be. And I'll also share the slides with Karen and Jimmy, so if folks want those, so you can have them. And then lastly, these are just some of the book recommendations that a lot of the information that was included in this presentation came from one or all of these books that I often recommend to my clients and have a lot of great nuggets in them. And a lot of the authors of all of these books have also been on several podcasts and share their wisdom and their insights and the things that they've learned. And a lot of this is based on a lot of data and a lot of research and kind of evidence-based information based on tons and tons of studies. So there's definitely data and science behind it, but I think too, just when people practice some of these things, they feel it for themselves that they have their own personal data to say that this is, you know, these things are actually effective, and different things work for different people too. But this is just an opportunity to explore what would work for you. So, sorry that I ran right to our 1:30 time, but
Thank you.
that's all
Thank
I've
you.
got.
Yeah, does anyone have anything else they want to share? I think I'm gonna cry more this week.
I'm
Um,
gonna stop sharing.
The book suggestions.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. Here you go. Yep. There you go, Susan.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Yes, thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Also, just so you know, these are, because they're recorded, they're available just like all the other ones that we've done are on YouTube. So feel free to go back and check them out. This was great, Tanya. I really appreciate all the bullets, all the definitions, and the movement from where we are to where we hope to be with those strategies. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. You're so welcome. And thank you for all your engagement, everyone too, and just your openness to share what you yourself have experienced going through responding to stress and burnout. So appreciate it.
I also shared a link in the chat that's just a short survey just to give some feedback to Tanya, and I'm sure she'd appreciate that. And thank you so much. If there's anything else you all want to add, just pipe in right now. Otherwise, until next time.
Yes. Thank you so much. And yes, I'd love the feedback too. It's a gift.
Thank you,
All right.
Tanya. Thank you,
Thanks a
everyone.
lot, Tanya.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Yeah.
Tanya. That was
Bye-bye.
awesome. And Dr. Judd is great. That's a great recommendation there, unwinding anxiety. He's fantastic.
Yes, I've heard him speak a couple times and really, really wonderful. And I'm actually just
Wow.
catching up on the chat right now, and I see Gaston say he's gonna smile more. Shocked he's gonna be more mindful and take a decided response not to let the stress build up. I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and all of your suggestions for breaking the stress cycle are all methods to stimulate the vagus nerve. And like, honestly, the vagus is, if you don't know what the vagus nerve is, search it out or listen to my podcast on it called Vegas Baby, and learn about vagus, because that is the key to fixing a lot of stress stuff. Like, we gotta regulate that thing. And it runs from all the way here, all the way to your pelvis. It's the most intense and extensive nerve in your body. So definitely take advantage of the tips that Tanya put in there, because they're all really good stimulators.
Mm.
Jimmy, what's your podcast called?
It's called Unlock the Shortcut. Or you can just search my name. Spotify, iTunes, all the things.
I'm gonna look that up. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what number it is, but look up Vegas Baby, VAGUS, and I give you the quick and dirty in about 10 minutes of what it is and how to work around it.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
Yeah,
it's
really good
all
presentation,
connected.
Tanya. It is. It's totally like
It's all
Vegas
connected.
means wander. So you can imagine it wanders all the way from your optic nerve and all over the place. And
Mhm.
laughing and hugging are brilliant way, and humming too, like totally stimulates. That's why the monks chant, right? Like that's
Yeah.
why they do it, because it stimulates the vagus nerve.
Makes so much sense. That's the thing. The science behind it all is that there's so much evidence in the science. And then when we have that understanding, it's like, oh, yes.
Totally. Yeah,
A
this
lot
is
of this
great.
comes in with yoga as well. Physical,
Right.
the mental, the all of it is part of it. And, a complete practice brings all of that to the table.
Mhm.
This was awesome. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you, Tanya.
you.
This was
Was.
great.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the day.